Doing well, sir. Happy 2025. Hope you had a great holiday break there, and had got some rest and got to play with some new AI toys and got to work on some old AI projects, if I can even call them old. And yeah, very much got into just started dabbling back into Agent AI. I was thinking about it the other day and was talking about Replit with somebody and wanted to see like, oh yeah, what's the platform been up to? And that's been up to a lot. It's really nice
Awesome.
now.
Well, I'm excited to see it because, of course, it's not surprising. Like we see this in HubSpot all the time. They introduce something and uh, baby steps is what we hear and feel,
Hmm.
and then you come back 6 months later and it's like, oh, this is everything. Oh, this is real now. Okay, let me start using it. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of was the feeling early on. Like got excited about agents and agent builders, and then everybody's figuring all this stuff out. So there's growing pains, and some people are willing to subsist through those pains. But when you have when you're awash with all these different AI tools, um, it's not hard to go find another one that's working a little bit better or behaving a little bit better. Um, but I had faith that in true. This is where I was just telling Rob this, and like how blessed are we to have somebody like Darmesh who has been serving in this very inbound focused, value first kind of way,
Hmm.
like founders and um, you know inventors. I'd like to say like him are going to be. They have a hand in making sure all this stuff goes well
Yeah.
for humanity, right?
Yeah.
And when he's already understanding the power of referring to this network of agents as a community, right,
Hmm.
alongside the human community that it needs to support. That's when we talk about mindset and getting that right. And if you can understand that when you treat AI as a collaborator, you get the best results. Period.
Hands
You
down.
you don't get the results when um, you just give it prompts and expect you to tell everything that you need to do, like figure everything out for you. It also, you're not getting it as much of the value when you like over engineer your prompt, don't let it do any thinking, and then just like do stuff you should be doing in Excel, right?
Hmm.
So like getting in the mind space of let's collaborate, with these tools and figure out how we can work together. Um, is how I've understood his approach to building out this agent network, and because that's really like if you can relinquish control and let the agent decide which other agent it's going to call on, right? Or like figure out where the guidance is needed and where it's like, okay, you got this. Like that's going to be so powerful. But you've been playing again. So
Yes, I
I'd
have.
love for you to just like take it away and tell us what's new. What's what you're loving.
Well, the and the I want to say the funny part. It's sort of like what's new is there. Yeah, so there are some new capabilities. Um, I'll just go ahead and let me adjust all my zooms here so everything looks nice and neat. Um, so yeah, they've basically put quite a bit of time not only into the interface but also into just the functionality itself. Um, there were previously like a lot of issues just in relation to like um, you know uh, how the uh, model would work, the step process. Even when it came to like debugging and sort of building, it was a little slow but steady. So you can see that like the first change that I really actually do like is the fact that you can do the preview, debugging, and see the context of everything all in the editor at the same time. So any changes that you update and make to any of your flow steps, you can just go in and start pushing through the live test. And what's really nice is that once you start adding variables in for your test, it just keeps them. So you don't have to worry about like going back and anything in. If you've changed something here that you want to test, you just hit go and keep going. Um, I am shopping these around for people to test and give me feedback on as well. So if you guys end up getting a link, by all means, rip them apart and tell me what you think about it. Um, I've worked on these three, as you can see. The content marketing specialist most recently. I'm still kind of tweaking some stuff before I let people play with that. But currently, there is a 30, 60, 90 master planner. There is a SEO specialist, and then there's going to be content marketing specialist. It's going to be a thing, and when it's all done in the end, you'll be just using one agent that sort of subcontracts all these other agents in order to do what it is you need to get done. But um, just as a sort of real quick example, I was going to do a SEO specialist scrub on XRF, and so the purpose of these is as individuals, um, is like to service a greater purpose, but I also wanted to make them usable as individual agents. So if somebody wanted to just one off, you could also do that. um but yeah, the so like what's new and awesome. I don't want to get too dive in too quickly. um so what's new and awesome, sharing is a little bit more open now. So you can share to anybody with a link, just yourself, but you can also allow people to see the code on it. On top of which, when you do actually run an output, you have the ability to now share that output and share what came out of it. So I kind of want to run. Well, I'll show you when I run this through, but um, just that aspect, being able to share the output, is really quite amazing. Just not only in terms of testing, but in terms of getting feedback and just being able to show capability, but also, obviously the copy paste of it. Like who doesn't love copy paste? The triggers, now you've got a schedule version of it as well, or you can just do a manual version of it. I think there used to be a trigger by email, so I hope that comes back. Oh, never mind. Enable agent via email is actually there. So this is something that I'm going to be playing with over the weekend. And what I want to do essentially is build out an agent that manages my email inbox for me. And I'm not entirely sure that that's something that's going to be doable, but I'm basically just going to do the research into the Google Gmail API, see what goes on there, because a lot of what's been added here is in relation to actions, and the actions that have been added are really quite powerful. So, for one thing, the click go to continue button actually works now. Um, Getting a user list is definitely something that's new. Getting user knowledge base files, or getting user KB and knowledge and files, is something that's new, and it's very, very cool. So it's the exact same file upload feature that you see in like other generative platforms. It'll enable you as a builder or somebody using the agent basically to give additional context to what it is that you're trying to do without having to type it all out, right? So if you're doing something that's related to reporting, or it's related to a project that you've worked on already, or a spreadsheet that you're working with, that's data that you don't have to reiterate into the model. You can just upload that file, then give it maybe a little bit of context where necessary, or if it asks for it, and go from there. And with most of the ones that I'm building, I'm trying to make it as easy as possible, so that all you have to do is just drop down and maybe do a couple, maybe a sentence total, like extra. Which I realize for some people is like, yeah, okay, but how good could that output be? I'm putting a lot of time into the drop down options and making sure that like the number of selections is going to give a more personalized and specific output, as opposed to like a general here's what any person would do with this. It's not really like specialized to the variable inputs that you gave. So I'm really trying to focus on that and make sure that the output that you're getting is consistent, that if you ran it twice, you'd get very much the same thing. It wouldn't be like you'd be getting a completely different layout with a completely different plan or something like that. And B, that what you're getting is actually leverageable and actionable, and it's not just hey, I could have just went to Barnes and Noble and bought the book on like here's your how-to guide on doing this, right? um, so we've got some additional user inputs which definitely carry things a long way. We've got some additional get data. So now we can go to Blue Sky posts. We can do load in web page screenshots. We can do YouTube transcripts now. And we can also do YouTube channel data. You can do web page content. I wouldn't like rely on this too much in terms of like being as good as a scraping like scraping script. I would there are actually additional like, so you can do also advanced stuff which you can do serverless functions. So you could put a scrape function in there that will probably be a little bit more powerful than the web page content function. Just depends on what it is that you're going after. If you're going at like if you need something that's like wiki based, then you would use web page content, right? Like it's situationally dependent. So also enrich with breeze intelligence is actually really cool when it comes to doing something, again, marketing wise, that's obviously related to either target market, target accounts, or something like that, competitor analysis. You can take the URL that somebody gives you and actually add a step in that enriches the data of that business, and then adds that to the variable that goes into the processing. So it's very cool stuff. If you're into like building like custom GPTs or building out projects, this is definitely, if you're into that and workflows, this is the marriage between those two things. So it's very, very cool, super, super addictive, especially if you're into like you add programming on top of it. It's some really cool stuff. I lost hours of sleep and I don't care. Um, so access to HubSpot has been opened a smidge more. We have object properties now and assigned company. So that's it's getting there. I again, because of the fact that you can call serverless functions, I'm not so concerned about it, because if you really wanted to, you could build in the ability to go call data. Now, of course, it kind of sucks because it's not necessarily like it would have to be a agent that's specific to your portal, because depending on I don't not gonna just use a test server, just use your sandbox. Don't do this with a live production environment. If you're building this out for testing, but it's cool to be able to test and add a serverless function that can go access your portal and perform API functions for your HubSpot portal based off of what you're putting together in your workflow. Realize that this is not, again, like I really want to stress, this is not the same as like the Replit agent. This is not something that you're going to be able to interface with and have it do additional things on top of. It is very much a workflow. So it is you start some steps and then it takes over and does a ton of work. And then maybe if you want to, like I haven't built anything overtly complex, but I'm obviously going to, just, for S and Gs. And I'm gonna make it so that you can like continue the conversation post the output and do some additional changes and things like that. But that's about the only way in which it becomes more than just the singular workflow. But it's still a workflow. It just fools you into thinking that there's more there by adding additional actionable steps. So point being, don't expect this to operate in the way where you're going like Replit, where you're going to be able to like talk to it, it can, and then work back and forth. That is true agentic like use case. So if you want to see what the difference is between the two, very much the same, or very much the way to go take a look at that. What you have here is very much the same as what you would have in Make or Zapier. It's a lot. It's very much the same thing. It's just put into a pretty serious, I'm not going to say no code platform, but it's put into a pretty close to no code platform, I guess. Since, to be honest, since the models have gotten so much better, at doing this stuff. It kind of doesn't matter now in terms of like needing to have a no code platform, but it's still nice to have anyway. Obviously, you can do use AI commands, generate images, audio output, and so of course, also the newer models have been added in here. So including perplexity. So if you're doing searches for information, you can do dead-on searches as opposed to doing some like a generic GPT-4 search. But you can still obviously use the GPT-4 capabilities. This one in particular does a search, so leveraging that. Um, then you have GPT-4 Vision, but you also have Claude 3.5 Sonnet multimodal. So a lot of additional capability, including Gemini 2. So actually, very, 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 very surprised and happy about this because it gives me a better chance of playing with 2 because I do not have a paid Gemini account and I will not get a paid Gemini account. Um, but it's nice. It's nice to play around with it, and it is pretty. The output is nice. I'm not gonna knock it. Um, Mixtral, if you want to go that route, and then Llama 3.3. Again, like going between Gemma 2 is like uh, strategy, like really strategic model. I would say, like if you're trying to do something like almost entirely based on strategy or planning, Gemma 2 is really great. Um, Llama is just the open source alternative, really, to Gemini, Claude, GPT. It's that level of model. It's a little bit different. I can't. At some point, I will put together a compendium of like, hey, these are the models that you should use for doing these different types of things, because to me they are like tools in a toolbox. Even when it comes down to like the individual subgenre, right? Like there are things that I use O1 for. There are very different things that I use O1 Mini for. Like I use O1 Mini for coding more than I do for O1. It's just it is just better at it when I've compared the two. And I don't do complex coding stuff, but for the simple things that I do, O1 Mini is far more accurate. It one shots it practically every time. Um, so yeah, I'll put that together. But definitely, always you also have the additional models that you can use. Processes finally have if else statements. So happy, couldn't be happier. Really, like the thing that I needed in order to get my thing working. So this makes me super happy. This weekend I'm going to be going nuts. I already kind of played around with it yesterday. It works exactly the way I'd expected it to work. So it's going to be amazing. Continue or exit the workflow. Again, that's going to be another part of being able to add post interaction. So like post output interaction, you can do that with continue or exit workflow. And then for loop, if you need to run a like for this, you know, replace with that, or for this should do that. It's just basic coding command. You can do that. Set variables was something that was already there, but then add to list is something that is also a little bit new. I think before it was just like, I want to say it was just set variable and like maybe add to list. I think it was just like 2 functions. It was not much before. Okay, and then for different outputs, you can actually now post to Blue Sky. So you can actually start doing like social posting with this if you wanted to.
Should I get a Blue Sky account? I've been seeing that show up
Yeah.
like everywhere.
Well, it's one of those things where like if it starts getting promoted by somebody, then I guess you're gonna have to, because it's gonna start becoming a thing.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
I'm not like I'm look, guys,
I'll stick to LinkedIn.
it's not even stick to right at this point. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, Facebook, LinkedIn. Like how many more? How many more networks? YouTube. How many more networks can I be a part of, right? Before it starts feeling like I'm not a part of any of them because I can't even spend time in all of them. So yeah, okay. And like Blue Sky is
So
just
that's why
what?
we need
Facebook's
agents,
Twitter.
clearly.
There you go. Like and I'm not even joking. Like when that actually hits, that will be the first thing that I have up and running is a version of me that handles all of my socials. It's like, my God. Um, All right. So yeah, so we do have a bit more functionality there. And then for advanced, we can invoke Python modules, convert files, invoke web APIs. This actually, none of this is different from the last time that I used it. Actually, invoke Python modules is new. I think it was just convert, invoke, uh, serverless function, and agents. So this is nice to see that it's like now AWS backed, right? And then, oh yeah, no, actually, invoke web API was not an option before. So this is actually really awesome. And this, I mean, that's the shortcut literally to what I was talking about for before. So instead of even using a serverless function, you would just do an API call, right? So whatever you can't do through accessing HubSpot, you can just use an advanced and do it that way. Again, that would I highly and only recommend that you do that for a bot that you are building for your own personal use. And I highly suggest that you don't do it because you will have to put in your API key, which exposes it in some way. I don't know how. It's going to be unprotected, sending across the internet. Somebody might get it, do some terrible shit to your CRM. Use a sandbox. Go get a sandbox environment of something else. Go get a free CRM sandbox of whatever and use it, test it in that way. Wait until these things become more like privatized, securitized, and all that kind of thing, and then you can roll out to your own stuff. Or well, of course, in my head, sort of thinking a few steps ahead. Basically, we're going to build one where you can just put your API key in as part of working with the agent, and then it takes that. So, but that'll happen when we have inputs that are that are secured inputs, right? That automatically encrypt the key. So yeah,
So
yeah,
a
a
lot
lot more
more power
functionality.
here. What we're
Yeah.
seeing. Okay.
So I just want to run this real quick just to show you guys an example. And again, I was testing this with a couple of people yesterday, and you'll notice a sort of continuous thing where when you're doing the inputs, you can kind of see it here. You do have to, even though there's multiple questions being asked. Somebody was asking me yesterday, like why they have to go step by step as opposed to just all of the questions being present and then just doing it all at once. There was issues. Basically, there were issues with how that all got handled on the back end, and that was the way it initially worked, that it was all just out in the open, and that was what that continue button was basically going to be used for, was like paginating questions and stuff. But in the end, I think trying to send that all as a singular payload is what wasn't really working, and it made more sense to just lock in each variable as you're going along. So personally, I don't care, right? I do wish that the processing of it were a hair faster, but it'll get there. Like, I gotta say, the last time we did this, guys, if you go back and you look at that video, I had a fair amount of complaints. I've had a fair amount of complaints on LinkedIn. I've launched a fair amount of complaints to the Agent.AI team. Can't do that. Can't do that. Like, I'm giddy. I want to play with this a lot, like all day, all weekend, all night. Um, and so I'm very, very excited for this now. It is leagues ahead of where it was 2 months ago. Like, to me, it feels like a completely different platform in terms of use and execution of it. So yeah, the step by step thing does not bother me. As per usual, I am testing, so I'm not trying to do anything else. I'm not trying to do anything myself here. Um, so I'm just trying to grab some stuff to put in here. And so this SEO bot, let me see if I can show you the back end on this guy. So the SEO specialist optimizes web content and campaigns for better search engine visibility. The actions are to basically get those pieces of information from you. Cool. Let's do the processing now. Then what it does is it takes the web address that you gave it and goes and does a Breeze enhancement on that to get some additional info. I'm testing to see if this is better for the output than using a like web scrape or using a function or serverless function version of it. It then takes all that information and it goes and invokes GPT-4o. And I should have taken that out of there before saving it. Oh no. I thought it did not have that. This output might suck. Oh, that's weird because it's using 4.0.
Uh,
So we'll have to have it do this by, well, I can't include it in the post or in this. I think I might be able to. Maybe. We'll see. This is the kind of stuff that I've been playing with. And this is like the giddiness that goes on is like, okay, 4.0 can do it, even though I told it to do it, even though 4.0 is web enabled. Maybe because I'm not using like the right model, maybe I need to use something else, I don't know. But my question now is, okay, well, maybe I could actually have used 4.0 in this prompt and chained this prompt somehow to then go like talk to Perplexity, have Perplexity do the search, and then come back. Or realistically, I can just put a step in here where it goes, where Perplexity goes, searches the web address, gets that information and stores it into a site analysis uh, variable. Either way, um, the prompt is essentially leveraging the variables that you're filling in from the questions, giving you core strategy alignment. Um, and so here's another thing. Like I'm building out use cases. I don't know all of these jobs. I don't know all of these positions, right? So this output and even what's set up here might not be great. And I'm sure people who put SEO stuff together are probably looking at this, maybe laughing a little bit. I don't know, right? Um, but again, I know how to ask for stuff. So I basically am asking models like what they would want, right? And that's what I put together last night. I'm not sure why it took me so long to think of it, but essentially I put together uh, uh, a team of CEOs basically,
mm-hmm.
and then I ask them questions about these things. So I asked my team of CEOs, what is it that you would expect to get out of an SEO plan, like an SEO marketing plan, like strategy plan? And so their response basically becomes what I put into the agent, as that will then align to what upper management is looking for, right? Um, my plan is to sort of do this on multiple levels and then give you the option as the user to select what level you're actually playing this to. So whether or not you're doing it to, point of contact who's a director, point of contact who's a VP, point of contact who's a CFO, or CEO, right? And so it'll kind of auto adjust what your output is according to that, so that it speaks to them in their language. So yeah.
Oh man, that would be powerful.
Just percolating. um
Yep.
and so yeah, this is the part that I'll have to get it to do some other way. um yeah, that's maybe why, because it was asking it to do some other stuff. Notice that again, I talked about this a little while ago, or we talked about it a little while ago. I don't know if it was the last show from last year, or go check out the episodes that we have from Wake Up with from Let's Build AI Skills Daily. In either case, telling it what not to do is every bit as telling it what to do, right? So when you're building your prompts out, like again, if you're thinking that it's like straight up copy paste with for me, it's not. It's still copy paste evaluate. So I'm still going in here and evaluating what's happening. Like before, it had a very generic search implementation there, and I had to have it change it so that it would actually go and try to pull up some reliable tools and not try to just make stuff up, right? So I had to go back in and edit, and it's not that difficult. Like it seems like coding, but it isn't, when you realize that, oh, variables always have two brackets around them. If I want something super important, then it has to be like basically listed out. If I want it important, it needs to be, if you, this is what's called markdown. If you use this in like a any sort of online forum, anything that has double asterisks on the end, or yeah, Discord also works, shows up as bold. So that's how something gets bolded. And then you use like dashes as like sub genres, let's say. So I mean, after a while, it becomes pretty natural, and there's not like a whole lot of markdown that you have to learn. So it's not that big a deal.
Well, it's supernatural when you just let AI do it.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. So that's another part of it is like if you didn't know aspects of this, you could again just go to the model and ask the model and say, "Hey, look, I need help doing this, that, or the other thing." Right.
Well,
Um,
that's the power. Like even if you were like involving another human or asking another human to do this, like
mhm,
especially with XRF, let's use the company of the XRF company as the example. Um, like if I were to ask Nico for help and he's used to working within the HubSpot ecosystem and maybe hasn't been in, manufacturing or materials analysis, and I give him a sheet saying we want to rank number one for CRM. If I don't tell him to discount everything that relates to customer relationship management, because I'm not talking about that version of CRM, I'm talking about certified reference materials. Guess what? I'm going to get a bunch of tactics on how to rank for customer relationship management. And because that's what the greater training data of his experience, and if you Google CRM, like like you're gonna get customer relationship management results. But now we're in this niche, we're in this other space where it means something different. There's nuance. This is where like until you kick AI out of the you know best possible answer for this is because I'm looking at the whole frame at once, right? This is
mhm.
why the framing, the context, do this, don't do this, uh, is so important. Just like it would be if you were to hire somebody new, right?
Yep.
Like this is I know all of your experience tells you this. Well, here, this is what matters, right? None of
Yeah.
that other stuff matters. It's important. And I can always tell when I'm starting to buck up against the status quo because I start not liking the answers, and then we have a conversation about it. I say, like, forget everything you've learned about how the humans operate. I just want your take here. Like, we haven't been doing a
Yeah.
good job at that thing, so I don't want the human-based advice here.
Oh man. Um, one of the one of the cooler things, right? And you guys kind of saw it is like when I hit go a second time, again, it takes the same information, so I don't have to like enter anything to retest it unless I want to change what the primary goal is, but I can do that as well if I wanted to, and it won't change anything else. But two things. One, you'll see the output. You can verify the output and rank it. Then you also have the ability to add your feedback to it, right? So, what didn't you like about this output? Now, when it comes to this, it's based, I believe, I'm not entirely sure. I want to say that this feedback goes to the builder. Um, I'm not. I gotta double check because I just looked into this morning and I was like, oh, cool. Gotta ask Sam about it. Um, and so, yeah, so you can rank and you can leave comments, and then your actions allow you to copy, save it to a snippet. So, what's a snippet within what we're doing with agents? It's what you think it is. It's snippets from HubSpot, but it's brought in here. So it's basically stored variables. And so if you wanted to, I don't know if you were somebody who likes to use agents to use stuff like Gemini 2.0 in order to pull in research data, you could do that and then save your outputs as snippets. And now you have this fine, high quality research data from Gemini saved as a snippet that you can then invoke and use within another agent as part of its base understanding or base context. So, in other words, you can think of snippets as a, a like a way in which you can customize your agent, like give it pre-context or I don't want to say pre-training because that's absolutely bastardizing that term. But basically to give it additional context prior to actually getting started with the user or to
Yeah.
even align it with whatever the user request is. So yeah, so then you can share the agent run itself or just share the output itself. Sharing the agent run shows the person almost like the if I ran this, you would see the yeah. So it looks very much like this, where you're able to see all the executions that took place and like what's actually running under the hood. Um, Not the code. The code only gets shown if you actually allow someone to see it, but it'll show you what actions took place, and then you can actually play it back. So you can a very cool accessibility feature.
What?
Yeah, so you can play back your output.
Wow.
So especially if you were doing book writing, then you could absolutely like play the chapter back.
Oh man.
And speaking of, because I was having because I've been having such a hard time in building out the writing project, I've actually decided to start building a writer agent that, and hopefully, I would imagine, is going to be probably 100x more capable and powerful than the writing GPT or writing Claude. And the reason I say that is because of these additional features. So for me, especially when it comes to writing nowadays, I like to do it with GPT because I can play back the audio. I can actually work in voice mode, and we can go back and forth on what's happening, and it can just read the chapter back to me, and it's like dictation, so I can stop it and say, "No, change this," or whatever. Um, and being able to save the snippets allows me to then load up another agent essentially with the historical information of the outputs for each chapter, right? So it's like if this is part of if it goes, and I want to stress something else, the outputs from these agents are not like the outputs from like a GPT model, right? So in other words, if this thing hit max content window, it hits max content window. It'll go however long it has to go to give you the response. It's not going to be like, so another, if I ask it to write a chapter of a book, it'll write the whole chapter and it is all of the pages, right? It's not like it writes just a little bit and calls that chapter one, right? Um, so in doing that, you could actually save chapters out as snippets, add that as part of another agent, or even just have that content in and of itself to be able to copy and paste using another GPT or something like that. Um, so the second part of this is just want people to take notice of like what happened with the change on the prompt, and it wasn't slight; it was a massive change because essentially what happened is the uh, output overall from GPT that I put into here um, got mixed in with the rest of it, and that output included essentially GPT saying, "Yeah, here's I'll give it a shot. Here's my attempt at doing it," and then the end of it had something like, "Let me know what you think," and all that kind of thing. So because that prompt was screwed up, we got this seriously screwed up output that is absolutely not useful to anyone, and great. Very much reminds me of the output that I got from these when I first started building them. Right? It was very super generic output, and it was not useful for anyone doing anything, especially when it came to like, oh, I put all those variables in. What's the point of that if you're just going to give me this crap? So we tweaked the purpose of the prompts so that it would gear specifically pay very close attention to the variable data in relationship to the prompt language around it. And so what I did was um, copy pasted everything that's going on action wise so that it has an understanding of what actions are taking place, and then of course gave it the like all the potential options that the user is going to have so that it has the greatest like understanding of context for here are all the potential, it's almost like it turned it into a slot machine at Vegas, right? It understands all the potential combinations that can happen, which helps it write a much more cohesive and better prompt, knowing that, hey, I'm going to have to potentially handle all of these things, right? So I can write all these various conditions into this prompt. Um, that's what that's what now creates this output, which is much more tailored, much more centered towards XRF, obviously. And as opposed to the first one, which was um, help you structure, here's a, what is it? However, I can help you structure a keyword strategy using general best practices and insights. Now we have a structured approach to align with primary SEO objectives that is comprehensive, like specifically to XRF, right? Um, so starting out with core strategy alignment and evaluation. Um, so I don't, you would know how accurate this assessment of your site is by comparison to myself, but essentially doing and going, getting some strategy alignment information put together, doing keyword categorization and prioritization. I definitely want to work with it more, especially using Claude to see if it can do like diagram output. But I don't know if I know Claude can't do like multiple diagram output or like multiple diagrams within the same output, but I know that GPT can. Um, did you know, by the way, that they're running like they have like embedded Python modules now? So when you ask for certain things, if you ask for like a certain diagram, it'll actually fire up a like a diagram specific Python module to build it out. It's crazy. It was really crazy. And I was playing around with it yesterday, and it built out this framework for me. I didn't even ask it to build out the framework, and I just had to ask it. I'm like, "Hey, since when do you build out frameworks? I've never seen that before. Usually, it's just like a Dolly thing. Are you using Dolly to do that?" And it was, no, I'm actually invoking this Python module. What was it like? GraphQ or something? GraphQ Pi or something. No, PyGraph. And it was like, yeah, just invoking PyGraph in order to build out this graph that you were asking about. It's like, sure, that's cool too. Like, all right. So I want to see if I can maybe bring that functionality into here so that it's a little bit cleaner than trying to read this.
Does that relate to the interactivity? Because I did notice last night I had more access to, like, it built the table,
Hmm.
and then I was able to click into the table and highlight stuff, and then, or I could have just added things to like there was an interactivity that I had not seen before.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's just an extra base like feature option, right? Like
yeah,
there are like I don't know, OpenAI does this, and like Claude does this too, or Anthropic does this too. They're a little bit better about announcement, but OpenAI definitely just like tends to roll out like what I consider mini features and not say anything about them. They're just because they're really like quality of life features. So I
yeah,
very much understand like not having to announce it because it's like, yeah, well, I mean, people were probably just kind of expecting that to be there too anyway. So
yeah.
um so yeah, don't let's see. This is a little bit odd only because of the fact that I gave it URLs to go take a look at. So I was hoping or at least expecting that there would be some legitimate information there. Um, let's see. Okay. But long and short of it, definitely so like essentially, and like I said, I've been shopping these links for these bots around to various people, but and I'll put them out on LinkedIn for you guys to also take a look at and mess around with. And what I'm looking for realistically is like people to use it, take a look at the output and say like, hey man, this is crap. Or, hey, I expected something else to be here. Or, hey, this isn't even good overall. It's not the format that I wanted or that I was expecting or something like that. Right. And naturally, guys, I'm not gonna not gonna build one for everybody. But I will take all the bits and pieces of the cool things that people bring back to me and mash them all into this SEO specialist who will eventually become part of the thing. And yeah, my goal is I don't think it'll be next week, but my goal is within the next couple weeks to finish my overall agent. Uh, and I think people are really going to like that one because of the fact that it's it's a one shot use, right? Like you won't have to worry about which individual agent you're going to need to use. Just it'll just query you with the options and basically change your um, literally because of the if then statement. Like that's why it was such a big thing. Like because of the if then statements, based on what you reply with, I can actually change where you're going to go in the workflow from there. And it works in a very, very awesome way too. So super, super excited to show you guys what that looks like next time as well. Um, and hands down, if you have use case, send it my way and I'll build it out. It's that simple. I mean, like it's a
Well,
hobby for me, right?
I'm
So
first in line, uh, because I'm gonna share my screen because I've been thinking
yeah.
about this all week as I get like start to play with different tools and same thing like you mentioned, like building a team or talking to this group of CEOs as I've been drafting like the value first framework.
Hmm.
It's like, all right, perplexity is like the research lead. GPT is the, the organizing like operations leader. Claude is in
Hmm.
charge of narrative and like educational like approach to it. Now I've got Gamma that is the visualizer, right?
Yep.
Um, and what I've been thinking is, and I think this is the last thing. Like we've already got super intelligent, not not super intelligent. Like all right, not maybe not there yet, but we
Very
got
intelligent.
very intelligent um, tools at our disposal. And I think what we just described is a bunch of newer, maybe easier to use connectivity
Yeah.
between the tools, right? This connectivity is like the last thing that we have to figure out to do so many of the use cases that we've been talking about. And this is one I'm curious about, because then it becomes like, okay, if APIs exist, if these things are accessible, then in theory, we should be able to do this stuff. So, for example, um, I do a let's build CPQ, with Bill on Wednesday. And right after, and I was able to show him this right after, like took him through it, right? We
Hmm.
copy the transcript. This is in Riverside.
Yep.
We bring it into the Claude project for Let's Build CPQ. Say, give me a recap. It gives me a recap. Then I take the recap and I create a new page. I'll just do that part real time because I can't get enough of that, how it works. So we'll just copy this and uh, come back here. We're in gamma.app, right? We'll click new page, add page with AI, paste in text, continue. It's gonna make 8 cards. I don't really want it to, since Claude did the work of doing the recap. I don't need a second AI to give it.
Give
That's when you
more.
start to starts to get off base. There's moments where you can let go of the control,
Hmm.
but this is not one of them for me. Because again, we don't have any custom instructions. There is a website base here, but I haven't discovered how much it uses of the website that already exists. But there's a theme in the background, deciding colors and stuff like that. Um, but basically, this connectivity of and what got my attention as you were showing it, like I'm guessing, because Riverside hasn't been that friendly in terms of being able to access the API.
Hmm.
But if a YouTube transcript, and I'm going
Yep.
live there as well.
Yep.
So we could say, grab YouTube transcript, create recap, and then get it as close to where I just got to as far as like make web page,
Yeah.
right?
It's a whole new world, man.
It is. It is. And that's like And what I also saw there is like we've talked about like how do you manage and maintain a system like this with the support of HubSpot? We've talked about objects. I think that's where my idea went first. It's like in theory, I could call up a HubSpot, custom object that I have
Yep.
and say put the recap in those fields, right?
Yep.
All right. What time this weekend? We're getting together.
Sunday, baby. Sunday, we'll do it.
Oh man, dude, this is like literally it's just time at this point, right? With most of these things, like when you understand all the building blocks,
Mm,
like more time spent equals more value received. Like, and it's painful sometimes that we can't just like. I mean, there was a couple weekends ago. I had the space. People were sick, and there wasn't a lot going on. So I spent a good 20 hours, fleshing out the book I was talking about, you know, and that's when I started digging into things and learning how perplexity worked and what that adds to the table. It's again like as you experience these tools, it's just like joining a new team, right? You got to get to know everybody. How do we play together? How do we
absolutely.
create success? So thanks so much for getting back into Agent AI and showing us. And
Yeah,
we look forward to seeing what's next, man.
absolutely. Looking forward to next week.
All right. Have an awesome weekend, everybody. All righty. Get
Mm,
after it. Sorry for
brings
making
up